Hey, somebody needs to format the room. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. The Professional Noticer, sponsored this week by our friends at Tucker ATV. You know, the variety of power sport products at Tucker ATV will blow your mind. The Hustler turf equipment, the entire line of Echo power tools, and of course Tucker ATV carries every make and model of Polaris ATVs. They have the big Polaris side-by-sides, even bigger Ranger Crew, and you have to see the showroom. The taxidermy, the antique displays, and an indoor porch with its porch swing and comfortable chairs, television, and the coffee. You got to stop in and meet Shannon and Lisa Tucker. They treat customers like family, which is why folks from 14 states have done business with Tucker ATV. Highway 43 North in Jackson, Alabama. Tucker ATV, the small town business with the national reputation. Observations and answers, that's what we do on The Professional Noticer. And as you know, we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. And we have that today from Littleton, Colorado. A new friend. I guess a new level of hero worship for me. I watched this guy, and I've just got to say, and maybe I should, when I say at this point in my career, that sounds kind of, I don't know, that sounds kind of like big dog in it, but after years of doing what I do, I'm very rarely blown away by somebody. I admire skills and all, but I'm very rarely blown away by a presenter. And I was blown away by this guy. And I'll just give you the basics on him. He grew up in Florida. He worked at a dive shop. He was interested in motorcycles. And now he lives in Colorado and takes his daughter to school, sometimes in a sidecar. How about that? It's just like Barney in the sidecar. This is a guy who is a sales trainer, presenter, guru for a couple of specific industries, motorcycles and boats. And so one of my favorite groups in the world is One Water Marine, and we got together with them, and that's how we met. And so please welcome from Littleton, Colorado, Sam Dantzler, the president and founder of Garage Composites and Wheelhouse College. Sam, how are you, buddy?
Andy, I'm doing great. I'm a little embarrassed because of that lead in. I think a lot of people have told you that. Like your introductions are like, how does anyone live up to that introduction that a guy like you is blown away when I'm going in there to just do some training, and then you walk into the room and I'm like, I know that guy, and I don't know how I know that guy. And then I put the puzzle pieces together and I'm like, I love that guy, and he's sitting here listening to my training. So that was awesome. I'm doing great. Thank you.
I got to say, so much of what I see today in training is just derivative. It's 50 years old, and it's repetitive, it's derivative. And what I saw with you was new insight. And this is what I am interested in. This is what I teach. I teach thinking, and that we have to progress. We're thinking to the bottom of the pool. We're constantly going deeper and deeper and deeper, because a great definition of wisdom is a deeper understanding of principle. And so it's not a deep understanding, it's a deeper. If it was deep, you could hit that target, but it's deeper. So when you get a deeper understanding of puzzle, where do you go? Deeper, I guess. but Sam, how did you get involved? I mean, because you are focused on motorcycles and boats. And how did you get involved in those industries? Because you are considered the guy.
Well, I appreciate that. I had a love affair of motorcycles when I was a little kid, and I don't know what it was, but I'd see them going down the road, and I'm just like, this is incredible. And growing up on a lake in Florida, my dad was a Navy man, and we had a boat, and we would go out in the boat and go water skiing and hydro sliding at the time, and scurfing, if you remember those things before they were wake surfing. And I'm dating myself, but you get it. And so I was allowed to do that. But my father was on the 6 o'clock evening news for the CBS affiliate in Tampa, Florida, my whole life. And so my mom was very protective of his image. So I wasn't allowed on a motorcycle for image sake, not safety sake, like because hoodlums and thugs rode motorcycles back then, which is exactly why I wanted one. Right? So I got into motorcycles, and I was, late at night looking under the covers at that magazine, Cycle World, maybe different magazine than some of your listeners are looking at night, but like so obsessed with motorcycles. I couldn't believe I wanted what I couldn't have, right? So I was allowed to have the boating, and then I got into college. And by the first day of college, I had the two things I wasn't allowed to have, which was a motorcycle and a tattoo. And I just continued from there. And I found myself very fortunate and blessed to be in an industry where I get to play in both. And we actually dabble in the bicycle industry too, which I also love. So it just kind of fell into my lap, if you will, based off of an obsession that I wasn't going to let go of.
Now, when we talk about boats and motorcycles and bicycles, people have a very surface knowledge of that. And they have a view of that that's like, yeah, okay, so this guy is like goes into a motorcycle shop and teaches them how. But this is a very deep and specific type of understanding, and I would call this behavioral psychology. This is this is behavior. This is how people, which is what I do, is how people think, how people react, and so. How did you get interested in that aspect of it? Because I can get how you're interested in motorcycles and boats. Okay, but you and I are kind of odd ducks that we're like interested in how people think. How did you get interested in that?
Well, isn't it great that we're odd ducks? I found the most interesting people in my life were the people who didn't try to fit in. And I tell my daughter, fly her freak flag high, because those are the people that think differently, and they have a different slant. And look, I guess you could take it back to, I'll ask you this question that you know the answer to. What are the best 2 days of a boat owner's life?
The day you buy a boat and the day you get rid of the boat.
Right. Now, our friends at One Water would be furious with that answer because their answer is Saturday and Sunday, and they're trying to change the culture, right? But everybody knows, even first-time buyers looking in a boat have heard this phrase that the day you buy, it's awesome, but boy, then you get out of it because it's a money pit and it's all this. And I thought, if that's true, who buys a boat? But not only do people buy a boat, they obsess about it. They dream about it. They think it's the greatest thing in the world. And then you go to the road and you're like, there's nothing more impractical for transportation than a motorcycle. Whether it's snowing here in Colorado or it's pouring rain in Florida, like some of those noon drowners that you guys have, and you hide under the highway. You see the motorcyclists underneath the highway trying to get out of it. There's nothing more impractical. So none of it makes sense. So who buys it? So I got fascinated with, why do I have a love affair with something that's totally illogical, much like the feeling that people have of the impracticalness, if that's a word, of those two things. And so I just started exploring why people did that. And I think one of the first books I ever read was on this subject was Buyology, the study of why people buy, right? Why do you buy? And why do people buy the blue jacket instead of the red jacket? And then I just started realizing humans are weird, and that's fascinating. And I'm interested in that slant on human beings. That's kind of where it all started from initially.
Man, that's fascinating. Now, you mentioned the blue and the red. There's a place on your website called Chasing Blue. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a different aspect of it. That is, I started realizing that everybody has their idea of blue, whatever that is, whether it's, I still have this idea that I'm going to ride my bicycle to the top of every mountain peak in France because I'm in love with the Tour de France and the romance of that bicycle race. Some people's chasing blue could be owning a yacht. Some people, it might be moving to another country, raising their kids a certain way. Everybody has a blue that they're constantly chasing. But when you get down to it, when you get the thing, you always want the next thing. It seems like human beings are never satisfied with the thing, right? If you get the house you've always wanted to have, then it's all of a sudden now, what's the next target, if you will? And so it's recognizing the love affair, the work necessary to chase that thing down. And again, it goes back to behavioral psychology. And I just get, much like you, fascinated with humans and why we do what we do and the decisions we make.
What is your blue?
My blue is to go to France and ride my bike to the top of every mountain peak I've ever seen in the Tour de France. That's one of the things that I want to do. I was set to do it in 2020, the year I turned 50, and then COVID hit. And I haven't been able to redirect that yet, but I will get there, I assure you. And I'll hit
that. Sounds like work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. But there's a, like anybody who gets into the work, you get this satisfaction that comes from the work, whether it's physical work or mental work or whatever it happens to be. And I think a lot of times I find myself out on a bicycle. I find myself way closer to God and country and ideas and my family when I'm alone working really hard. And so probably where a lot of that comes from.
One thing, it occurs to me that people listening to this or watching this podcast might be interested in knowing. We kind of hit the surface on what you do, and the idea that you got interested in, the two best days in a boater's in a boater's life, and why is that, and how they say. But as I sat there and thought about that, knowing these guys like I do, and hearing about you for 2 years, and then seeing you, and then having several conversations with you, it occurs to me that one of the things I do is I am kind of an overall cultural person. I am working at shifting their culture and making their culture top notch. And I look at, and so because of that, when somebody says, "Hey, what should we do?" My knee-jerk reaction is, "Well, look at your industry and see what they're doing." And when you see what they're doing, turn around, and go the other way, because everybody's not making it. And so it occurs to me that across the board, that is kind of the thing. Yeah, the two greatest days in a boater's life is when they buy a boat. And so if you go real deep, if you go to the bottom of the pool on that, okay, why would 50% of that, why would that second best day be when they get rid of the boat? Why would that be? And you start listing things like, well, trouble with the boat, hard to get it serviced, hard to get answers, it breaks down, or there's a lot of things like that you can then, when One Water Marine has that knowledge, because they have taken that to task. They've turned that around. I think that may be across the board in their industry, but I don't think it's their customers, because
you're talking about removing the friction points for their customers.
There you go.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. There and so I think that's interesting to see that this is what you're teaching, and we both work with them, and we're both coming at it from a different angle to the same place. And I think that's why I was so fascinated by what you did. I mean, because I just rarely see somebody that I feel like understands the depth that they need to get to. And I think reading changes people's lives, but it's rare that one book will do it for them, right? It's a culmination. And a lot of times you have to read the book several times. People have asked me, why would you read a book 5 times? Well, I was a different person every time I read it. I was seeing different things every time I read it.
Yeah.
What are your favorite books? What's a book that shifted your awareness?
Look, I'm going to give you that answer because it ties into something that really shifted your answer as well. But if you would give me the liberty, let me come a long way around to that, because I want to touch on a couple things you just touched on.
Please.
A lot of times the person, it's not that they had friction with the boat, although that's a lot of it, right? These things do break down and they need fixing. And sometimes if you can't get into the service department for 3 weeks, that's frustrating because you're not using it as much as you want to use it. But a lot of times it's that they were sold a boat. They weren't sold a dream. They weren't sold an outing. They weren't sold time with their family. They weren't sold an experience. They were sold a boat, and happened to be the boat that didn't really fit their needs. And so all of a sudden now it's frustrating. We don't spend enough time on it. Now I just want to sell it, et cetera. And I find it interesting that right now at the time of this recording, when you look at the economy, there's a lot of people in retail that are freaking out because there's a lot of downturn on some of these statistics out there. A lot of discretionary dollars are now not being spent on material goods, but they're being redirected into experiences and vacations and escapes and concerts and venues and things like this. So one of my messages to the people at One Water Marine is, look, what is the person buying the boat for? And the answer is one of those things. They're not buying a boat to have it tied up at the dock so that it could just sit there. They're tying it to go spend time with their family, to go out and be seen at the yacht club, go out and do some fishing, take an adventure, take it down in the Bahamas. And when you get the idea that what you're selling is a verb and not a noun, it radically changes the playing field. And then if you get to, well, what verb am I trying to sell? Well, how do I know Andy's verb until I actually spend time getting to know Andy before I ever start talking about a boat? And that's when somebody put me onto your book, The Noticer, years ago. And I read that book and I instantly connected with you in that moment. I'm like, that's it. It's spending time with other people, noticing things about them that mean something to them so that we could connect on a level to establish a level of trust that you would allow me to take you through how this widget is the conduit to your dream. And that's what I teach. And I think that's maybe what kind of shifted your thinking a little bit when you were in the room. You're like, this guy gets it on a different level. I'm guessing, but maybe that was it. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I watch sales trainers use scripts and talk about, this and say this. And when they say this, you say this. And I'm like, dude, you need to have them you need to have them arrive already deciding who they're buying from because you know them so well. Because we all buy from our friends. I mean, that's with real estate, do you go and take the top 100 people in the Tri-County area and run them in a computer program to see who's in, then get them to the top 10 and then personally interview them to see who's going to list your house? No. Who gets to list your house? Your buddy who sells real estate. That's who.
That's it. And we know you've heard this from a million sales trainer. People buy from people they like and trust. Okay, cool. I could probably get to like you or have you like me through some casual banter back and forth, but trust is a whole nother component, right? Where does my brain went to? Where does trust come from? If that's true, then I want to figure out in the laboratory how to concoct this thing called trust so that somebody would trust me. And if trust is you sit there and you think, is trust time bound? Well, you've probably known people for 20 years and you're like, yeah, I'll go have a cocktail with this guy, but I don't trust him to pick my kid up from school, And then you'll get your drink from one of the baristas at Starbucks. You're like, she seems pleasant. I wonder if she's available to babysit my child on Friday. You're like, wait a minute. How do those accord with each other? They
Yeah.
don't. And so I went deep down the rabbit hole of reading everything I could on behavioral psychology to figure out what causes trust and how do you turn those valves on in somebody else. And then the book, the long way around to your original question was, what's the book that really rattled my core and shook my foundation? And it's a book called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lupton. He was a he is a doctor. He is a scientist, and he studied at several universities. And he was studying, he was putting cells in petri dishes and watching the changes of the cells and how they affected. And they were trying to figure out ultimately what became the Human Genome Project, which is how many genes do we have to form the human? So if there's a defective gene in there, could we, like an auto part, can we replace the carburetor with a new carburetor, and that person can grow up through their childhood with the proper part, not the defective part? And one of the things he discovered when he was working in the laboratories was, if we are made out of these proteins, if you will, and the protein is put into a petri dish full of, say, bone, it would become bone. And when the protein was put into a petri dish of fat, it would become fat. So the thing we thought was the part was not the end result. It was totally dependent on the environment that it was being put in, and it became that environment. And we sit here as parents and we tell our kids, be careful who you hang out with, because you are a reflection of the people you surround yourself with. Translation, you are the environment you put yourself with, right? We've heard things like to think is to create, because you're changing your environment. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that all this sales training, all these scripts, it's just such garbage. I think about what's the best one-liner to get somebody to go on a date with you? And it's ridiculous because it's so disingenuous. And I just think, change the environment. If you want to change the outcome, change the environment.
Yeah.
What wasn't happening in sales training was people weren't genuinely interested in the person before figuring out what their dream is and seeing how they could satisfy their dream. So I backed into sales training through the behavioral psychology side of it all. And I continue to read books like that. I'm continued to be fascinated with it. I continue to listen to, the next book I read of yours was The Bottom of the Pool, and just thinking differently. And it's like, well, who didn't think of that, right? Of course we can push off the bottom of the pool and jump up in the air, right?
Right.
But we don't think about these things. So I really like how you talk about, I watched a video of you at a congregation, and you're like, I'm not here to give a speech, and I'm just here to talk and get some ideas thinking. And I've said some version of that with almost every speech I've ever given. Like, I just want you to think, and maybe you can tell me I'm wrong, or maybe you'll get something from this thing. But if we have a conversation, I think we're going to walk away with some great ideas of how to change that customer's experience. That's kind of the slant I've always had.
Yeah, I was fascinated being able to be a fly on the wall at your training session, but I had something happen that I wasn't expecting, and that was, I thought, man, I would like this guy to come. I mean, rarely do I think, yeah, I want somebody to come watch me, and that isn't what I meant. I would want you to sit and watch me so that we could have a conversation, so that you could say, hey, where did this come from? And hey, do you really believe that? And hey, why do you believe that? I don't know. I would welcome. I feel like. Well, I mean, before we started this, Matt, our producer, we were trying to get together on times and all like that, and I said, well, he'll be there, when he gets there. And Matt said, yeah, he's just like you. And I thought,
thanks, Matt.
I thought, well, yeah, I kind of got that too. I kind of got that too, because we think along the same lines, and we're trying to drag people to think a little deeper on stuff. And so
let me spin the table back on you. So what What moved you? I know that you had experience and you talk about the butterfly effect, but like, how did you put those Lego pieces together that really rattled your cage? Because I really think some of that book did for me maybe what some of your readings did for you in the butterfly effect. I'm guessing at this point, but
Yeah, I was kind of forced into the butterfly effect because I had the stories. I had the stories of Chamberlain, and I had worked with some military stuff, and I had the head of the Air Force in Europe, the I forget what you call him, but he's head of all the Air Force in Europe, the Middle East, the Balkans, all this stuff. And and he called me one night, in the middle of the night, and said, "Hey, we have a problem and we need your help." And I was like, "Well, what?" And he said, "Next week you're going to see coming out in the newspapers, there's going to be released a report about the Air Force having more suicides than civilians as a whole." And and so our experts are telling us that these people are doing this, and a lot of times succeeding, not when they're angry, not when they're sad or depressed. That's part of it, but the tipping point is when they decide they don't matter. And he said, "We've told them they matter until we're blue in the face." And and so it occurred to one of my staff guys the other day as we were talking about this, you know, that Andy talks about proof being better than encouragement. And and so what I need you to do is I need you to prove a life. I said, now what is this? And he said, "I need you to prove a life. I need you to prove how much a life matters. Prove it." And so that's what became the butterfly effect, is proving that life, proving, and I found so many different aspects of that that are exciting, chilling, but it worked. I mean, it worked, and I'm still aggravated that the services don't share with each other. I mean, I heard the other day the Army's still having this problem, and of course, you don't hear anything about the Air Force with that anymore. And I'm like, why don't you guys talk?
yeah. Well, I tell you, it meant so much to me when I heard that, and just about how you wouldn't be here today if your parents didn't get together, if they didn't meet in that bar, and maybe they wouldn't have met in that bar if that person's mom didn't say that so and so. Like the craziness at how any one person got to be here. And my father was 48 when I was born, and he passed away in 2004 after a great long life. And then my mom, she got Alzheimer's right on the backside of that. And so during that time of going through, if anyone has ever dealt with someone with dementia, it's just so rough, right? And I think the blessing in it all is maybe that the person doesn't know they have it. It's everybody else that has to deal with it.
Right.
My
right.
mom lived out a very happy, blissful life of ignorance. But in going through that every day, I would get on a motorcycle. I tell my wife, I'm like, I need to take a lap. And that was my therapy session. Because I was going through that. And then I realized everybody I know over the age of 22 has something going on in their life, right? It's a child with a learning disability. It's an ailing parent. It's what there's something going on, right? And they all need that thing: boating, motorcycles, bicycles, surfing, RV, camping, whatever their thing is, they need to be able to check out of the world because it totally recharges the batteries and brings the better you to the table the next day. And so you had mentioned in the intro, Wheelhouse College. Well, Wheelhouse College is a bunch of online training where my wife thought, because of my travel schedule, she's like, if we could just film you training, then maybe you wouldn't be on the road so much. And that kind of backfired because they'd see the training and then I'd go in-house, right?
Yeah.
But the whole premise of building it was, I thought, wow, we could film me and something I say may affect some 30-year-old who's having a rough time with his marriage in Orono, Maine, that I've never met before, and I could change that person's life. How amazing is that? Let's do it. Whether it ever made a penny or not, let's build this thing. Right. And so again, when I saw your butterfly effect, I'm like, God, there's so many connections that I find myself thinking like you, and I'm not trying to raise myself to your level, because holy cow, when you told me, no, really, man, when you told me, first of all, the fact that you just sat in on my training was amazing, and then you told me that you appreciated it and gave it such accolades, that just means the world to me, because I have looked up to you for years, and now I'm finally getting to meet you. But I've always thought that if you could come at it a little bit differently, maybe with this idea from the user's perspective. So from that kid who's struggling with his marriage and orno, what does he need? And the person who's buying the boat, what do they need? Not what do you need to sell? What do they need to change their life? And I think, to your point, deeper is really the word. I wrote it down because it's just like, it's not deep. It's even deeper.
Right.
Anyhow, connecting some of those dots.
Let me. I want to spring something on you here to tell people. You and I meet a lot of people, and neither one of us are actively looking for friends. Okay, we've got a lot going on. We've got family. And so it is. It's kind of an amazing event when you meet somebody that you connect with, and you and I have been texting, and but I want to tell people. I say that people drop leaves, that you can go into a forest and you hadn't even got to look up to see what kind of tree that you're under. You can pick up one leaf and you can tell, is that an oak? Is it an elm? Is it a hickory? Is it summer? Is it winter, fall? Is it a young tree, an old tree? Is it healthy? Is it sick? You can tell a lot by a leaf. Well, people drop leaves too. And, you can tell a lot by the leaves that people drop. And so I just want to tell people that I found a Dantzler leaf today that I did not know existed. Now, you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, and you said you were listening to audio, and so I said, "Hey, do you have a CD player?" And you said, "Yeah, I got a CD." I said, "Okay, I'll send you the CDs." You said, "No, you ain't got to do that." And I said, "Yeah, I will." And you said, "Well, I'll pay for them." And I said, "Yeah, no, you ain't got to pay for them. I'm just going to send them to you." And so I did, and you were very gracious and sent me a thank you note. But then I find out today from my staff, because I said, "Hey, I'm talking to Sam and just some paperwork on him." And they said, "Sam Dantzler?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well," this was the note I got. "Sam made a 20-book donation to the veterans last week." I just think that is just so cool. I mean, I didn't know. You didn't say anything to me about it, but you went online, and we've got this Books for Veterans program, and you did that. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that and what a huge leaf that is. I just want people to know what a huge leaf that is on Sam Dantzler. Because Sam didn't come and say, "Hey, by the way, I made a 20-book donation." That's just something I might have very easily not even found that out. But that's something that you did. And I just can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And I want to continue learning from you. I really want to continue this relationship because I think that I have a lot to learn from you.
I don't even know how to respond to that last comment, Andy, but thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, my dad was a vet. My dad, I just told you how old he was. He was in World War II, and it's kind of crazy because I talk to other people and they're like, "Oh, you mean your grandpa?" And I'm like, "No, it's my dad. It wasn't my grandpa." And so I'm so grateful for veterans out there. I'm so grateful that the life that we have, it's every day I get up. I live right here in the foothills of Colorado, and I just can't believe I get to have this life. And a lot of it is because of the protection that the veterans give us, quite frankly, has always been my opinion. So no, it was great. I heard that you had that thing going, and what a great thing that you do to donate those books. So yeah, I wanted to help with that. But
hey, where was your dad? Where was your dad in World War II?
My dad was in Trinidad, if you can believe that.
Wow.
air traffic controller in Trinidad working for the Navy. So no, never saw battle. And he really was one of those guys that never talked about it at all. But I also have my wife's grandpa. His name is Clarence, which what a great name. Why don't we use names like Clarence anymore? He lives in the western slope of Colorado, and he is 95 years old right now, and he's got all his wits about him. He's my favorite person on her side of the family. I get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and have coffee with him every morning. And he too was in the war. And boy, he's got some stories that'll just floor you. Just so much stories of, getting in trouble. And, every time, Sam, there's usually a woman involved, and that's as deep as it goes on. I was like, I know, Clarence.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Those people are just a treasure. We talk to them whenever we can. And that I read so much about that because I'm fascinated by that group of people, and that I look at you, and you are a passionate parent like I am, and you think a lot about that. And so I look at people like Clarence, and I think, our nation, if you put a character line, for 140 years or so, we rose in character, and that was the high point. And there has been a decline in character ever since that point. And so I do a lot of work with that, and a lot of thought and prayer go into that for me, because we've got to somehow regain that.
Yeah, I do have faith a little bit for the future. My daughter goes to a private Christian school, and they have Grandparents' Day, and they have Veterans Day, and they invite all the veterans and all the grandparents, and they have all these celebratory days of celebrating your parents, your grandparents, your elders, the people who give you this opportunity. And so I think it's being brought back in snippets, and my hope is that continues to unfold as we roll forward, because I'm with you. It's kind of a bummer to see what we see out there today.
Yeah. Well, buddy, I want to talk to you some more sometime, and so just keep me on your speed dial, because I want to have you back, and I want to talk to you just regularly anyway. But thank you so much for taking your time. One more question: how can we help you?
Oh man, that's a great question. How can you help me?
Yeah, what can we do? What can we have a few people that watch and listen, and we will have how to contact you on our show notes, but we want to keep up with you, and anything we can do for you, let us know.
Well, I appreciate that. Garage Composites is an organization, and we work with, like you said, marine and motorcycle dealers, and we help them with this training. We help them instill best practices in their businesses, and we believe that a high tide floats all ships. And so we share all those ideas with our 20 clubs or 20 groups. And so if that's of interest to somebody that you deal with and they want to reach out to us, happy to chat with them. If they want to do some online training, Wheelhouse College is available with free test drives. So thank you for that. There's my shameless plug. If you guys can point some people our way, that'd be great. Absolutely, and if not, I'll just keep reading your stuff and learning. We're going fishing.
Hey, let me just say, since you're a friend now, I can jab you like this. If you're taking Abby to school one day and you're on your motorcycle and she's in the sidecar and you're feeling particularly cool, just remember Barney Fife had a motorcycle with a sidecar too.
Yes. I'm channeling Barney, I guess, in that moment. But Barney did not have helmet communicators. And so Abigail sings Taylor Swift to me. So I don't know who was the bigger winner there. Maybe Barney was a bigger winner without Taylor Swift in his ears the whole time.
Buddy, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Andy. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all you do.
I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy for you. seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Kickstands for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional funding provided by Boatercycle.com. Friend, are you one of those adventurous people who can't decide which thrill to seek on what day? Do you choose day on the water only to change your mind and go 2 wheels on the open road? Well, today is your day. Introducing the Boatercycle, a newly designed outdoor vehicle just for you. The Boatercycle is constructed from titanium on a Harley frame. So it looks like a Harley, it sounds like a Harley, but our engineers have created hidden flotation devices that deploy at the push of a button. To the uninitiated, it looks like you're riding a motorcycle across the water. Which you are! Again, the Boatercycle's flotation is completely hidden from view, so be the first on your block to have one. Amaze your friends, but that's not all. The good people at Boatercycle.com have made special options available. The Boatercycle Angler Package comes with rod holders and a dash-mounted fish-finding sonar unit from Lowrance. Or perhaps you'd prefer the Boatercycle Cypress Gardens Package, complete with tow ropes and wakeboards, perfectly set up for pulling up to 6 water skiers at a time. Also available is the limited edition Camouflage Duck Hunters Boatercycle that seats 2 with scabbards for up to 4 shotguns, plenty of room for all the steel shot you need, and a fold-out camp stove for heating coffee. Go online at Boatercycle.com and make an appointment to drive one today. That's Boatercycle.com.